3 webinars in a row and kind of progress as we go. So today we're going to talk about the Offshore App. So, passages offshore, using it, settings, little bit of interpretation, and just going through some things in there and how you can manage using the Offshore App. So I have done quite a few webinars on this sort of area in particular. And if you want to watch some others that I've done previously, there's a couple of Atlantic crossing ones. So I guess that sort of alludes to what you can do with this tool. It's anything from, going coastal, for a day, as I mentioned previously. And so I will probably cover off some things I've covered before, but, you can use this for, doing a coastal passage, or if you are, literally crossing the Atlantic or sailing around the world, as people do. So, let's jump right into it. And I will find the screen I want. So I always come back to this before we jump into the Offshore App. I've actually was just looking at, we'll talk about this a bit more later. I was just looking at the race that is on at the moment, the two-handed round North Island race of New Zealand. I'll just zoom out a bit. Got a bunch of friends doing it. I did it last time, which was 2 or 3 years ago. It's a very cool two-handed race around New Zealand. You can see these guys, they all got held up by this high, but the big boats managed to get through and have finished, and there's most of the fleet still sitting out here off the west coast. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to come here and talk about. I wanted to come back over here to weather routing and just reiterate polars. If you're going to do anything in the Offshore App, come in here and set your polars up. I know we covered it last week, but you need to come in here, and I'll just move my zoom controls and set up your polars. So, whether, your boat type, you can use the advanced polar, and of course, setting up the wave polar. So if you want to know more about the polars, reach out to the support team, or there's some tutorials on it. But I can't really, express just how important they are. So getting those polars right is a big deal. And so spend some time on it and, and think about it and try and get your head around it. All right, I will go out of here and I will I think I can probably switch screens, but I'll just stop sharing and we will jump straight into the Offshore App. So we are now in the Offshore App on my Mac laptop. You can use this on an iPad, on an iPhone, on an Android phone, so your Samsung or whatever you've got, a tablet. Even a Chromebook will run this piece of software, PC, laptop as well. So basically any of the common devices you have will run this piece of software. It works a bit differently to the others. Everything is saved offline. We download grids in here. We download, well, same as before, we download our weather routing, but we've got quite a bit more control over what we do. And it's a really neat piece of software, and we really try to not go too crazy with this. And what I mean by that is you can, if you've ever used a piece of software like Expedition or Adrena, it's that, you can do a lot of technical things in there. But the reality is, for most of us, and that would include me, there's a bunch of, you can just go down a massive rabbit hole and probably not gain anything. And cruising sailors, two-handed sailors, and people that aren't running professional navigators, you're just not going to get any more from going down that rabbit hole. Yeah, this is a pretty cool piece of software that we have, and we try and keep complexity out of it, even though it will do some very complex things for you without you realizing too much. So where do we start? Let's just start at the beginning and keep it simple. Let's run a route. So let's run a route before we so we'll do two things. We'll run a route before we leave, and we'll run a route while we're underway. And we won't focus too much on the first one, because it's just really, that's about getting as much data as possible, whereas showing you how it all works offshore, and both times we run the route, we'll look at some interpretation. But yeah, when you're offshore, that's the important stuff to know for using it on a SAT connection. So I had a route running to New Zealand just for fun. Probably something we should talk about before we even go any further is, let's say, so if I come up here and I click on Grib, it changes my view. And you can see here I've got this white box, and if I move my red end waypoint and I move it around, you'll see this white box moving. And that's important to know for controlling your Grib area. So this box is the area that we're going to see the visual mappy part. And what I really want to talk about here is, let's say I was going to, is that Norfolk Island? Maybe. And my Grib area was, yeah, as I move that round, it automatically moves. But if my Grib area, and I can adjust this Grib area by grabbing the corners, and this is important for later. But you'll see, and the point I'm trying to make here is that if I downloaded this area here where my white box is, I would probably have no idea that this system was up here. And, you know, if you look at it, we probably want to know that that's there. I mean, its expected track is southeast, but we want to know that. We want to know that there is a cyclone out there that could potentially really put us in a lot of danger. So, which is why we have the GMDSS forecast here that's been turned into a graphic, thanks to our clever AI man. And you'll see here it's got all the warnings, and same down here. So, you know, we can't see this one, but anywhere that every time we download that GMDSS graphical forecast, we see all of the warnings or notable weather features around the world. So if I scroll around, you know, you can see them everywhere. And the beauty of that is it's a very small piece of data to download. So I've got my Grib area, I can see the wind, and I can see the waves, and I can see the cape and gas maps, but we really, that big picture stuff, that beyond our Grib area, is something that is really nice to know, and just how cool that GMDSS feature actually is. If I click on there, you know, we have the little you know, the little box pops up, and then the cool thing that changed this week, oh, it's not actually in here, it'll be in here on the web version, it's in there. When you click on these now, I think the last two times we've done webinars, and you click on these, and if we were in the back in the website now, when we clicked on that, it would actually be highlighting the feature that we've clicked on. So that wasn't there 2 weeks ago or a week ago, but it is now. And so not in the Offshore app yet. I guess that's coming in the next update, but it's nice that the feature that you're going to be clicking on is actually highlighted in that big text forecast now. So just wanted to talk about that, because it's kind of a bit of an elephant in the room at the moment, the cyclones in the Pacific. So I just wanted to talk about that. Righty-ho. And so you'll see here, these boxes have come up on my screen. There should be a bunch of boxes down the coast of Australia. Probably if I did, it might be from my download before. If I downloaded down here, you'd see boxes all down the coast there. So you've got the one here in New Caledonia, and you see them all down New Zealand. So these yellow boxes, the big ones are the 8 kilometre resolution areas, and the small ones are the 1 kilometre resolution areas. So we've talked previously about how important resolution is. And so you can see them. And once we do this download, we're probably going to see them down there, because they'll only pop up once I've done a download. Sometimes they can be a bit annoying. I'm not a big fan of actually seeing those boxes because you can tell by when you're looking at the grids that the areas. So I think this is probably going to be a pretty common route if you're going offshore that you would look at. So let's work with that. All right. If I came over here, I could have, you know, all my legs, all my routes saved. You'll see here, I've got the race that I was talking about before. I've got a whole lot of them saved from in there. But yeah, anything that I want to do, you can save them in here, and you can have, like, especially if you're going around an island or different courses, you can have waypoints saved. Let's just close that, and I can obviously enter my lat long. So I've got my start and finish waypoint set there, and I'm going to go. You know, we've used the departure planning tool that we talked about last week, and so we're pretty certain that we're going to leave at 6 o'clock at night, as it is where you are, and that's, you know, that's not the worst thing in the world, departing at night. You know, like, yes, night sailing's harder, but if the weather dictated that that's what you want to do, it's not a bad thing to do. You're going to wake, you know, like, you know, sort of 12 hours into your trip, and you're out at sea. You're actually, you know, you've got a whole day to sail in beautiful weather. Most people leave early in the morning, and I can understand that. An interesting, I had a meeting this week. We have a boat over here in New Zealand that's in survey, and I had to meet with the people to get that survey renewed. And I discussed with that person about sailing to the weather, and they were just emphatic that people should just sail to the weather or go boating to the weather, was more their point of view. And I just can't reiterate that enough. Don't sail to a schedule, sail to the weather, depart to the weather. It's going to serve you well. So we've got our start and finish waypoints set up here. I'm just going to come over here and click on download. This is, whilst it will look slightly different if you're using your iPad, and probably it'd be nice if I did this on an iPad, but it's actually hard to show on here. So I've clicked on download. The settings are basically the same. You know, everything you set up is the same. It's just got to look slightly different with the menu settings. This doesn't have this box. It's in a you know, more of just a laid out format that can fit in the iPad. So you'll see here, I've clicked on this download button, and I've got all of these options here. And so before I left, I would get everything I can. So this time step here, what that means is that's the time step of the grids. So you can get, in general, the time step is 3 hourly for global grids. So, you know, 3, 6, 9, 12, etc. We can change that time step. So we can change it to 6, 12, 24. And so what that means is that the model's running those 3 hour steps. So it's not running every hour or every second or every minute. It's running every 3 hours. And what the software is doing is it's interpolating the data between, you know, 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And it goes, okay, well, if it's this at 6 and it's this at 9, we can safely assume that it's this in between. And I would be interested if anyone can actually really find a flaw in the fact that if you went to 12 hourly, it's really interesting. Especially, you know, and I'm talking about on a global scale, and you know, or a passage level that we're looking at here. You know, 3 hourly, you know, so we have hourly forecasts in the Predict Wind app in that first up to 36 hours. But for this type of thing, actually seeing those differences is not going to affect as much, because you're looking at bigger systems. We're not looking at thermal effects and coastal variances. We can go into high resolution modeling and look at that if we're sailing down the coast, and we can do that in here. But our time step, you know, for now, because we're going to pretend that we're leaving to go offshore now, we'll get everything we can. And so we're going to go, I think it's not going to be even more than a 7-day trip. We're going to get the highest resolution data that we can. So that means that we're going to get the high res Predict Wind models. We're going to get the ECMWF at high res. We're going to get Spire and UKMO at their highest res, which is 10 and 15, and the GFS. And so we're getting all of those models at the highest resolution to view. The weather router is always using the highest resolution. And you see over here, we've got all the models selected. So we're going to see them all. And then we can select all our parameters, and let's just get everything. Our weather routing, departure planning, let's just call it now. We could make that, you know, we could set a time an hour from now or tomorrow morning. We're doing weather routing. We're not doing departure planning or destination forecast. This little button here is our download settings. So we can come in here and we can change a bunch of settings. So if we're doing departure planning, we could change our departure spacings. We can change our polar speed. This is really important when you're offshore. We'll come back to that on our second download. TAC penalty, it's a bit of a racing thing, but you know, if you think that the router's tacking you too often, you could actually turn that TAC penalty up. It's in seconds, so you could, you know, make it a few minutes. You know, and so the router won't like doing that for you. We can change our polar. I've got an XP44 set in there because that's what I was looking at in the yacht race before, because I was interested in the route that they'd taken. Motoring, let's turn it on. So we're going to motor at, let's call it, how fast are we going to motor? Don't want it to be too loud. Let's call it 5 knots. But when our boat speed, sailing boat speed falls below less than 4 knots, we've got our wave polar turned on because we've gone and set that up, and we can change all our other, you know, our depth avoidance, not that big a deal once we're at sea, and our tidal and ocean currents. So we can change that around. We're not going to mess around with the advanced routing adjustments because they are, we put them in for the Mocha sailors. There's a bunch of stuff you can do in here. You know, some settings around different stuff. You don't actually, if you've got an Iridium Go or an exec, you don't need to mess with them. An optimizer, if you had a high-speed satellite system, you could use that. What we can do is here, sorry, not my if you username and password, you do have to log in on this app, and this is where you do it. In here, if we have anything that we want to get rid of, we can come in here and we can clear all the data. So we can clear all those things, and we can also, you guys probably want to use the same settings as me, and they are actually the defaults, you know, knots and wind direction true and temperature in Celsius, etc. So we can, this is, and in preferences is where we can change a bunch of stuff. And I'll just close that box now, move my Zoom controls again. So where are we up to? GMDSS, we want to get this. If I turn them on and off. It's not really going to show us a whole lot at the moment, but they're small files. Observations, we can get those because they're not going to be too big once we're offshore. Click on next. I can turn on the ocean data. This is actually pretty important. So your ocean data is not it's not going to change a lot over the course of your passage. So let's say we're doing the passage we're doing. We can download this data now while we're on our home or, tethered to our cell phone before we jump onto our satellite connection. If you had an exec, you can probably get some of this. You might just choose one of these models. You can get the data, so an Iridium exec. But let's get them all now because they don't change heaps when we're offshore. So if we've got them in there, they're going to stay in this piece of data. So even if we do new downloads, until we replace the data, they will stay here. So until we do a new ocean data download, that information that we download now is going to stay there. Satellite imagery, if you're into looking at the big picture stuff and seeing where systems are, you can get your satellite imagery. I'm a big fan of grid data. They use satellite imagery and a whole lot of other information. I don't think I can do a better job than the grid data, so I don't get too carried away with the satellite imagery. It's also sort of covered by the GMDSS. I mean, the satellite imagery, you'd look at it for some big picture stuff. Some people love it. I'm just not a fan, so I'm not going to get it. GPS tracking, if we're in a rally, we can get that. AIS data, we want to get that. That will give us all the AIS targets within 300 nautical miles of us. So that's satellite and terrestrial AIS. And that's just going to help us look for fishing fleets and, shipping traffic, etc. YB events, let's just leave that on because I was looking at the race. Okay, so let's click on next. So you will see here, I've now come to my download page. So this is all of the stuff I'm going to download. We've got estimated file sizes for each thing I'm going to download. So these are my grid files. So I'm going to download all of them. I've also got my weather routing at the top. I've got my my current grids here, my GMDSS forecast, my observations, and my YB events. I'll just click on download all, and we will talk about this while we're going. I will have a sip of my drink. Right, so you'll see here they're all downloading, and they are they're not always exactly the same. It's an estimate, and I'm on my home Wi-Fi, and so it's going pretty fast for some pretty big files. If I was on a SAT connection, I would have chosen one of these other tabs, and to reflect my connection, I would have come up here and I would have selected that Wi-Fi. When you're sailing offshore, you're connected to your Iridium Go or your Iridium Exec Wi-Fi. So you'll see there, everything's downloading. My weather route has downloaded, and as my weather route downloaded, you would have seen the background changed, and that's got all of my weather routing data in there. So everything that we've downloaded is actually the same as the weather routing data. So all of the grid data that we've downloaded in this download is the same as what has been used in our weather routing, because we have just downloaded, well, still downloading, roughly 100 megabytes of data, which is a lot of data on a SAT connection. So everything's downloaded now. We'll close that tab and we can look at our graphs. But let's come back to them later, really. And I will move my Zoom control so I can actually change screens here. Up the top here, we've got tables and map. got all our different table data here, graphs, wind, summary. But let's have a look at the map. This looks really easy. And so probably should have chosen a different route, and maybe we will for our next one. Or maybe if we choose being further offshore, we'll have a more complicated route to look at. But there is some stuff to look at here. So we've got everything we wanted. We've got a couple of warnings. We've got wind against current. That's interesting. And we've got roll and vertical acceleration. So I guess if we weren't looking at those warnings and we just quickly ran through this route, I mean, so you see, oh, actually, that's a good point. Let's zoom in. So what the weather routing is doing here is we are looking at, it must be, is it pretty windy where you guys are? We're about to get windy. Let's have a look. Yeah, must be pretty breezy. So this is the high resolution PWG. See, we've got our model down here. This is the high resolution box, the 1 kilometer. And then you'll see as I move along, we go into the 8 kilometer resolution. So I zoom out a bit and you'll see that's my 8 kilometer resolution box. And then if I move this along a bit further, we go into the global model, so the 50 kilometer resolution. So yeah, we've got a few things to think about there. Just to have a little chat about how interpretation, this is a super easy one. All of the weather models are saying the same thing. So that doesn't always happen. And if you've used Predict Wind before and you've been perplexed with different models, this will be a pleasure to your eyes. They're all in agreement. I mean, I can run through this route, and I have not looked at this. So, and the fact that all the models want to go the same way, the little dots, these here, the little dots and the boat are not separating. I'm pretty confident, and you know, happy to be wrong too, but I'm pretty confident that all of these weather models are basically all going to be saying the same thing. So what that means to us is, at a glance, they all want to do the same thing. We can run through it, and they're all pretty much even boat speed wise. So that means that the wind speeds are probably pretty similar. And so if all of the models, so we've got 6 models there, they're all saying the same thing, we have a really high confidence in the forecast. And as someone that works in weather, you know, it's a scary thing to say, oh, I've got really high confidence in the forecast, but we actually do, you know, that everything is lining up here. So let's, you know, put our money where our mouth is and zoom back out, and let's have a little look, and, you know, let's go to the ECMWF. That looks pretty similar to me. GFS, Spire looks slightly lighter. UKMO, you know, like there's subtle differences between them, but they all thinking the same thing. So wind-wise, we're pretty happy. We want to come through here and look at all our different parameters. So we have, as we move through this route, we have that rain band moving through there. So let's go and have a look at Cape. I'm on the wrong model. So just a little tip there. I was on, I don't know what model I was on, UKMO, does not have Cape. So I am in the Offshore app. It's only going to show me what I've downloaded. So if that model doesn't have that parameter, it's not going to show me. So we know that we got to about here and we had rain. There's no Cape with it. Whoa, look down here. That'll be interesting. When's that? Tuesday. My time. So, yep, nothing in there. I know GFS has Cape 2. We can look in there. Cape is convective available potential energy. Yeah, you can see it, you know, that obviously the cyclone's got lots of nasties in it. We can also look at the gusts for our trip. You know, I'd say they're all going to be pretty similar. You know, slightly different. Can click on the screen, have a look at them. So we've looked at, you know, the basic things there. We can have a look at our wave. And I think this is where it's going to probably get interesting. You know, we've got our combined wind and wave state here. And that's, you know, looks pretty good. You know, let's have a little click on the map here. You know, 2.6 meters, 8-second period. You know, we can see that they're sort of coming beam on. You know, if you're in a catamaran, might not be that nice. But I mean, I guess if you want to reach across to Newcastle, probably something you have to live with. But I think there's a bit more to this, and how we would actually discern that is we do have our warnings there, but we really just need to jump into the tables, because we can't just rely on looking at a map and go, oh, the wind and the wave looks pretty good. We actually need to dig into this a bit. So just drink some more of my gin. It is only my second gin, so don't worry. So what do we need to look at here? Come over here to the graphs. So as we can see in the wind maps, things look pretty good. You know, there's a bit of cape there, but it's not high. That's really low for your part of the world. But what we did see was some warnings for our wave stuff. So this is, you know, I think I mentioned it even in one of the other webinars, the Down Under rally that does the exact passage we're looking at is, well, I think they are again this year. They've been going around the barrier due to our old mate COVID, doing a really cool rally there. But they did this passage, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and I know that they had it looked probably almost exactly like what we're looking at. The route looked the same, the wind looked the same, but they John Hembrow, who runs it, he said to me that it was a pretty horrible passage, and he said it was because of the secondary swell. You know, they had different swells coming in, and so he's got a cat, and it was pitching around, and he said it was really uncomfortable. So you can see here our roll in RMS is high. So that's why we're getting the warning. It's above 4, which is our threshold. The threshold's quite high. Even if it was just below 4, probably pretty ugly. Vertical acceleration again, going above 0.2. You know, it's only just, but I mean, the threshold is still pretty high. And we even have a little bit of boat slamming down the end here. So that's interesting. So, but I mean, it's cool. You know, oh yeah, I can show you these graphs, but let's go up here and try and work out exactly why that is. So if I look here at the wave direction, I'm on combined wind wave and swell. And if I look at the wind wave, oops, yep. So we can see here in that period, you know, between 135 to 180. And then I click over here and I go to primary swell. And you can see it's definitely at a different direction. Let's have a look at the secondary swell. It's not matching up with the with the primary, and let's see if we have a tertiary swell. Sometimes you'll see in the tertiary swell there's nothing there, but we do. We have a tertiary swell doing something else. So I suspect this is, I haven't done a big picture look, but I suspect this is something to do with the system out there. Or it could be another weather pattern that's just gone through. But generally, if you've had a big weather pattern go through and it's moving and it's a tight system, you will end up in this sort of situation. So basically, all of our wind wave, our primary swell, our secondary, and our tertiary are all going different directions. And just to double down on that, let's have a look at the period. Because, so they can all be going different directions, but there are also, if the period is different, yeah, I mean, it's you can sort of see why we get these warnings, because there's a pretty confused sea out there. If we'd only looked at the wind map and the wave map, we probably would have thought everything would be nice and comfortable, but the reality is it's not. And so that's something that you want to consider. And maybe we would have considered that in our departure planning, but the reality is the actual passage itself looks pretty good, but the wave state's actually going to be pretty horrendous. So atmospheric's fine, wave state's not. Let's just run through our settings over here. So we have the GMDSS forecast there. We've got the graphical view of it showing on our wind map. If we wanted to, we could click on here and we could see all of those warnings. And this is a great resource. Definitely use it, or at least click through off the map. Just move my zoom controls. Observations. Let's see how many we get if we zoom in. What is that? Gato Island. Yeah, so we can get these the starter while we're offshore, which is pretty cool. And I now can't close it because my zoom controls are in the way. Crikey. There we go. And you'll see my weather app disappeared when I did that. This is probably the thing I really wanted to talk about, was our ocean data. Why have I got no offshore groups? Because I'm at the start of my route. So this is why we were getting the wind against current warning. So this is really important. I mean, I hope that you can see that in a few ways, we're probably covering the same points. So we've got it, our wave routing is picking up on the fact that there's a confused sea. Our warnings are telling us that they're telling us about the roll from the confused sea. The warning's also telling us that we're going to have the wind against current, and it's no small amount of current in the model here. Like that is 2.3 knots of current. So you can take advantage of it and you can use it, and the weather routing is going to try and use it to help you as best it can, and also mitigate adverse current, but it's not going to avoid the sea state unless you go into the comfort settings, and that's a whole nother story. So we want to have sorry, just zoomy fingers there. We want to have the wave, the currents, we want to be able to see it. Obviously, once we move away from Australia, they become less, but they're still there, and it's very nice to know. So we can see that stuff, and when we do our next download, we'll be able to see that. Departure planning, we don't want to look at it because we're not doing departure planning. Spot forecast is really cool. if you are in a remote location and you want to get a week's worth of data, it will give you the data for wherever your red dot is. So a cool little feature. We didn't download our satellite imagery. GPS tracking, we also didn't download it. If we were in a rally, we would want to download it, or you could have buddy boats. So that's probably something I should have mentioned. If you're going to do a passage and you have a buddy boat, you're both using Predict Wind, which is pretty likely. You can both, and you've got the GPS tracking going, you can actually see your buddy on the map. It's a very popular thing for people to do. You know, 2 or 3 boats will actually travel around together. Wavy events, you're not going to see them here because they're all down over here, the one that I'm entered in. Oops, move myself down the screen. And, you know, I can click on any of those guys and see where they are, what their course is, and what their speed's going. So that's the same thing in the GPS tracking. So I'll just move my zoom controls again. And again, if only you could see what I could see. So let's go back to our weather routing. And what we're going to do here is we're going to, where are we now? It's Friday. So let's pretend we've sailed a little bit. You know, we're on our second day. Where are we? Sunday? Yeah, Sunday. And let's go to this time here, because by here I know that, and something I should have pointed out before, and I'll point it out now when we do it. When I do my download, I know what the update time is. So let's say we've sailed to there. What I need to do here is move my start waypoint to where I am. So how I would probably do that on board is if I had an Iridium Go or an Iridium Go exec and a data hub, the position will show up here, or I can just grab that lat long off my chart plotter, whack it in there, and it will put my start waypoint where I am. Really important. It may sound silly, but people don't realize that you've actually got to do this. You've got to move that start waypoint. We are working on that actually automatically moving to where you are, because people seem to like that sort of thing. But anyway, you need to move that to where you are. And then we're going to come over here. So we're going to pretend we're at sea now. And we're going to do another download, because we want to be downloading weather routing and GRIBs every time the models update. So that's every 12 hours. And it's very important to do that. Don't try and sail the whole way across to New Caledonia or anywhere in the world without updating your weather. So we need to change how this looks. And so I'm just actually going to quickly flick over here. We are not going to get ocean data. So we're going to turn that off. And I'm going to just turning that off now so I can, everything else is a bit more clear. So we need to change this. As I mentioned before, we're talking about the time step between the GRIBs. The software will interpolate between the time steps. So the times when you will see a difference in it is when, usually when a front is where only time I've ever found it, is the timing of a front. If a front stalls in between the time steps. So, you know, like, so it might between, let's say between 9 o'clock tonight and 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, you know, there's a front going through. The timing of that may not be exactly the same in the software as it is in the GRIBs on the 12-hour time step, because it stalls, but it's very hard to tell. So anyway, we need to get our file size smaller to be able to use this on a SAT connection. Whether we're on an Iridium Go exec or a Fleet One or an Iridium Go, we need to control this file size, because satellite data still is not, you know, is still limited, it's offshore, and we need to manage that. And that's, you know, partly why we have the software, and but you can use the software on any connection. But we need to control it. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to change our time step to 12 hourly, 7 days. Well, it's not going to take me 7 days to get there anymore. I only actually need 4 days of wind, of weather data. And I can change my resolution. And so you see, before I was on high resolution, so I was getting the 9K EC, etc., the high res predict wind models. But I'm going to change that to 50. I could also go to 100 because we're offshore. We're looking at bigger patterns. It's not quite as critical. And also our weather routing is always using the highest resolution it can. So our weather routing is going to be using the 9K EC, 25K GFS, the 15K UKMO, etc. I'm still going to get all my models. I probably don't need to in this situation because we've got such a consistent route. But let's just do it. What I can do here is I can drop off some of these parameters. Do I need to know the cloud? Do I need to know the temperature? Probably not. I could drop off the Cape, but hey, we're heading over there. I could come back and I could drop that off and I could come back and add it in if I wanted to. But let's drop it off. Gust again, so just on the Cape, I could come back and download it again later, is what I'm trying to say. If I'll see it in the weather routing. So if it's in the weather routing and it's high, I'll come back and download it. So I can come back and do another download later. Something I should have done was actually adjusted my grid area. So, and I'm going to go and do that right now because I want to show you something. So once I get these set up, and so when I'm sailing offshore, I will have this set up how I want it, and I don't need to come through and change any of these things. I will literally, so let's cancel out of here, and I'll come over here to grid, and I'm going to change this grid area to be a little bit closer to the area that I'm sailing. I might just put out here a bit just so I can see if that cyclone is going to come at me. So I've changed my grid area. So how I did that is I went to grid and then I moved that box. So it's important to know that. What I tend to find is see if I do that, the grid box is a bit tall. Once we move away from the equator, and so let's just adjust it to how we want to see, the area that we want to see. Often where we are, the wind can come from the west a bit, the systems, probably a bit further south, that's the case. So, we can adjust that box. If we think that the weather's coming from a particular side, we can adjust this box. But we need to keep it small to control our file size. So I've just clicked on download again, and we're back in here and see all my settings are just the same. And my file size is already really manageable because I've changed that box size. So I can keep my Cape, I could turn my gust on and off. It just does. So probably didn't mention what I'm looking at is down here is my estimated file size. When if I turn a bunch of this stuff off, let's turn them off. And it gets smaller. If I was on Iridium Go, this would be pretty good. I could probably handle this. It'll take a while. If I was on an exec, this is easy money. Our settings are still the same here. Excuse me. We want our GMDSS. You can see there as I turn it on and off, it's tiny. Same with the graphical forecast. Observations, again, pretty small, pretty easy. Let's click on next. As I mentioned, I've got my ocean data turned off. But as you'll see in a minute, that doesn't matter because it doesn't change. It takes a lot to change the currents, the ocean currents. So I've still got my data here, my AIS and YB events, but we're only downloading 223 kilobytes. Really small. And you'll see how fast that goes. So the weather routing is going to crunch 50 megabytes or more, 100 even, like we downloaded before. Before we downloaded 100 megabytes. Now we're downloading 223 kilobytes estimated. Come in here. I just clicked on next. And, you know, we would choose one of these connection types. I'll have a drink. That party's over. You would choose our connection type. I would come up here. I would choose Iridium Go Exec in my Wi-Fi settings on my device. When I'm at sea, you're always connected to it anyway. It's easy. We're on the web. If I went on one of these other connections, you'd lose me. And you'll see here I've got all my estimated file sizes. So let's click on download all. It's going to happen pretty quick because I'm on my land-based internet connection. What I should have mentioned before, this information down here is critical. This is the timestamp of when the GRIB was produced. So the GRIBs are run at 0 and 12 UTC. That's the initialization of the GRIB. So that's when they do the initial conditions. The GRIB itself isn't produced anywhere until anywhere between, well, let's have a look here. You know, 4 and 8 hours is you actually get the weather model output from the initial conditions. So you'll see here, the PWG, you know, the initial conditions, this is my time. So I'm GMT 13. So this took 4 hours from midday to produce. 4 hours, 15 minutes, because I'm an hour ahead. And so all these times here, they are relative to the time on my Mac here. So whatever time your computer or laptop, you know, your iPad or whatever is on, this is the time that your Offshore App uses, is your device time. So in the Predict Wind app, times adjust to wherever the location that you're looking at, but in here, everything is based on your device time. So it's good to know this for a few reasons. One is you want to know when they're updating, but sometimes there's a problem. You know, this is computer modeling. Sometimes there's a glitch in the matrix, and the model hasn't updated. So if you know that model hasn't updated, you might go, I'm not going to look at the GFS on this one because it hasn't updated, whereas everything else is new information and that's old information. So we'll see there, everything's updated. My weather route's updated. I've got the new graphs in the background. You'll see here we've got all our information again. I'll just move that. You know, we can look at the same stuff we just have, you know, our true wind direction, etc. I should run through these things here. Graphs are great at looking for trends, and I particularly like looking at them for our wave stuff. Wind, wind is basically all the points along our route. This is where we come and look at whether our weather routing is matching our boat speeds. You know, our average boat speed is actually pretty high here, but we're reaching. So, you know, maybe it's pretty realistic, you know, but yes, yeah, I mean, 17 knots at 90 degrees true in a monohull. I've never sailed on an XP44, but, you know, doing 9 knots, that doesn't sound unrealistic to me. But you just want to check that all that stuff matches up with what you do. So we've got all the different models here. We can click on any of these warnings. It's talking about the roll and the vertical acceleration, which we already know about. And so this is all the, you know, for each model, it's showing where we are on the route and what they are. You know, you can come in here and look at the model you particularly want to look at. What we looked at before was everything looked the same. I would probably have a quick look at the map before I got too stuck into the tables, just to see if there's any differences. There's not, massive differences between them. So, we can probably go back to our tables and sort of view them with confidence that comparing between them isn't going to really be a great use of our time. You look at these, the time taken between them all, it's very, very similar. We're not, when we're motoring, we get a little motor sign comes up on these. So we're obviously not motoring. Summary is just the summary of our passage, and there's that information in there that we could use to make some big picture decisions, especially if there wasn't much wind. There might be some decisions to be made about maybe we want to turn our motoring down, how much fuel do we want to use, things like that. But there's also some really good overview sort of information. Better check how long I've been talking for. Yes, quite a long time. Quite a talker. Wave. So we can see our wave information here in the tables. This is a really nice way to look at the different parameters, the primary, wind wave, primary, secondary, tertiary, and see those different directions at the different times. So we can look through that for anywhere on the route. Current, we've moved away from the coast now, but the current's not so big. Atmosphere, this is our cape. Temperature, pressure. Nice to match up the pressure with your barometer on board. Of course, you've got a barometer on board. Export. This is actually super cool. So whatever device you're using, let's say you're using an iPad, you can tell I'm a Mac user probably. I could choose any of these routes and I could export them. I could also come in here and add a bunch of waypoints. So just add a couple more. And I could actually move these waypoints. If I had a route that was, perhaps the routes were more diverse, they were more split apart, I could move those waypoints around. Zoom in a bit. I could, choose a route that was, I could make my own route in the middle of all these waypoints and say, okay, that's where I'm going to go if I had a more diverse route. And then I could export it. Just while I'm here, something that I haven't mentioned, if we wanted to hide some of these routes, we can turn them off and just look at a couple of routes. Some people find it a little bit overwhelming. If there was one that was an outlier that you didn't want to look at, you could turn them off. Anyway, let's go back to our tables so I can show you what I wanted to talk about. So I could select one of the routes to export. So I could export this to a piece of navigation software. So on my iPad, I could export that to Navionics, or iNavX, or any of the myriad of other navigation software that I want to look at, or I could choose my waypoints. So I could choose one of the routes or my waypoints. And so my waypoints would be the ones that I just put in. What's nice about my waypoints is that it's just going to give me those points that I put in. So you can export that. You can, even on here, I could save that to my hard drive. I could put it on an SD card and I could plug that into my chart plotter. It's a bit of a muck around if you ask me to do that. But if you're on a iPad or a tablet, easy to do. All right, I am going to stop talking because I realize that you guys like to have dinner, and I've talked for an hour and I didn't even realize that it went that fast. And I will stop. What's happened to my Zoom? Stop sharing and talk to Quentin.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. That's great. And of course, that's all done on the Offshore app. So if you don't have that on your device, please download it. It's free to download, isn't it, Nick?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. And so you can actually, you can do some limited stuff without a subscription on it. So you can download grids on it. and it'll work on a land-based Wi-Fi. So as soon as you go into a SAT connection, you have to have a paid upgrade, and it gives you all the weather routing and all the other tools. But you can actually download it, have a little bit of a play around with it, and it's a free download. So download it and have a play.
It looks like you've covered everything, and everybody is nodding their heads and going, yes, I fully understand everything that Nick's been saying. And there's a general understanding of everything. Who's just a show of hands, who's used the Offshore app here in this room? Maybe about 7 or 8. So quite a few of you never had the opportunity. And really to reiterate, one of the points that Nick has spoken about, that area, that grid area, really, really important, especially, if you just got a basic Iridium Go, it does take quite a bit of time to download all that information. Getting the big picture, really important, but then focusing in on the area that you're actually, sort of sailing through and minimizing the size of those files really does help in terms of just getting the data through. Middle of the ocean, what I would invariably do, only upload it every 12 hours just to keep a track of what was moving and what was happening. And it works tremendously. You just hit your current position and upload the grid file for the remainder of your route.
Just while you're talking about that, there's something that I usually do cover. And so we had that small, that relatively small area. And especially if you're doing an even bigger crossing, you will often do, it's really nice to see the weather you're going to get for, let's say, the next 3 days. And then once you've done that, you can actually go back and you can make that grid area really big, and you can change the resolution to 100 kilometers, and you could maybe go to, 6 days or 7 days or 8 days. But then you only download one model. And so then you get this really big picture as well. So you've done your sort of your smaller short-term planning, and then you can actually change that grid area to a really big area, just get one model, and you might only get wind and pressure, but it's just so that you can actually see a really big picture map is a nice little thing to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what I can't reiterate enough, guys, if you're going sailing, you're going offshore, 1 to 2 months before you go, sign up to the professional, sign up, get your Iridium Go going, play with your weather routing, play with your destination planning, play with those aspects, get to understand the tool. There's nothing worse than being 100 kilometers out to sea. You left last night, and now you're trying to understand how all this bloody stuff works. And you're away from your help desk. You can't contact Nick all the bloody time and say, well, how the hell does that work? You can't get hold of the help desk or whatever the case is. Give yourself time to download and play before you go. It's certainly something that I did. And really the best way of learning is playing. Yeah. And understanding how this all works and what does that mean, and looking at the graphs and looking at the tables. And when I spoke to my crew, for example, when we were heading down to Tasmania, the summary table was great. Okay, this is, the percentage of time that we're going to be in these type of conditions. Are we all comfortable with that, crew? Yes. Okay, let's go, So the data's there, but without understanding how all that data works, it can be a little bit restrictive, I think I was talking. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, no, I was just agreeing with you. I've never met Quentin, but he's speaking the right language. That's 100% right. The more time you spend doing it and looking at it, the better. How I actually ended up working at PredictWind is I was playing around with the virtual Volvo, and I actually won one of the legs in that many years ago now. And so I was just a weather routing geek, and it's actually quite fun. Strange as that sounds, actually working out how your boat moves through systems and what's all happening with the weather, it can actually be really enjoyable once you begin to understand it. So, yeah.
Certainly gives you a lot of confidence. Sorry, we have one question.
Just a question on
Can we just talk up there to the microphone? Hold it close to your mouth, please.
Yeah, Nick, thanks very much. I really enjoyed this. On Powerboats, you said you're going to update your software to be able to take Powerboat parameters better. When do we think we'll see that, and will you include stabilizers?
Good point on the stabilizers. I don't know about the stabilizers, and because I think the answer is no, because I think that we couldn't model for it, because I know that it's been discussed, and so I guess with the stabilizer is that you would just look at the raw data and then go, all right, that's pretty bad, but I can probably handle that with my stabilizer. And as for when, real soon. We actually broke our weather routing for about half an hour yesterday when they tried to deploy a beta version for us to test. And so it's super close. I've seen the interface. I've seen, as I say, we broke our weather routing for half an hour yesterday, so it's super close. It's coming, and I'm super excited about it. And so it's got, it's going to have, you're going to be able to put in your cruising speed, and it's going to have, some fuel management stuff, not fuel management, but fuel prediction sort of stuff in there that. And you can put your RPM in, and also your boat height, because it's going to see how much the wind force and on the vessel, etc. So it's going to be super cool. So yeah, that's very close.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, the code is all the back end code is done. It's actually the front end that's we're just working on, and as long as it doesn't break the rest of the weather routing.
I've got Iridium Go on the boat, yes. And the question is, comparison between Iridium Go and Iridium Go Exec. I understand you've got to replace the aerial as well as the box. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. And it was something that we had a lot of discussions with Iridium over, because we really didn't want that. We really wanted everyone to be able to just plug in the box to their existing external antenna. And we even went as far as proving to them that it actually does work. And they apparently what it does is it puts a whole heap of load on the satellites using the old antenna, because it's a different frequency. So that was sort of where that got to. So yes, you do need a new external antenna to go with it. The new one is pretty cool. I mean, but if you're happy with what you've got, you know how to use it, and it serves that purpose, that's great. Like it's not going anywhere.
How does that compare with Musk's organisation?
That's Starlink is a whole. It's completely different. Like it is, if we can all get Starlink reliably offshore, I think that it would be hard to pass up, would be the honest opinion. And I mean, and I can say that because we do the satellite stuff at Predict Wind because we want people to get weather offshore. So that's why we do it. We don't do it because it's, to be honest, it's a pain in the ass. It's hard to support. There's no money in it. We just want people to get weather. So if Starlink can be reliable and people can, trust their lives on it offshore, which we can say that about the Iridium stuff, then, let's all jump in. But yeah, I mean, if we have a Starlink unit here, and if that happens, it'll be awesome. But it's, there's a whole different set of factors there. Like the Iridium is, proven, reliable offshore. Both the Go and the Exec are portable. The Starlink isn't. Power draw. Voice, if you have to take the unit with you and you can't take a Starlink with you. So they're quite different. But the Starlink for speed and it's not even a comparison. It's so much faster.
And what about costs? Can you give us an idea of the cost differential?
Between which?
All three.
I probably can't, to be honest. We do have a comparison chart because on our website between the Exec and Starlink, because we like to be real about things. So we do have a comparison chart on there, but I don't think we have cost. I mean, what with Starlink at the moment, what people are doing is they're using the RV version, which is the recreational vehicle version, and they're putting that on their boats, and they're going generally coastal. I think there are people going offshore, from what I've seen, and they're not. Their terms and conditions are pretty clear. You're not meant to, but that's what they're doing. But they do have a maritime version. So Starlink has a maritime version, and that's pretty expensive. I think it's about $5,000 for the gear, and then $5,000 per month as well. Like, it's pretty big time compared to. But if you use the RV version, it's cheap, really cheap. From what I know with Iridium, and they'll protect, Starlink will protect their market. They'll protect their maritime market. So I don't know. We're watching that one closely. So it's very interesting.
Thank you.
Nick, I realise it's very late where you are. I honestly, and I think on behalf of everybody here at RQ, we can't thank you enough for giving up 3 Fridays in a row. I know it's you got a big family, and we really do appreciate your time giving up your Friday nights for 3 weeks. So please, if everybody could just join in our usual